What is the dumbest idea you have ever had that actually worked? In my freshman year of college, my grades were really not great. And my parents were really strict about getting good grades. When my dad asked to see my grades, I panicked and did the inspect command on the computer where you can change typefaces on the screen to read different words and letters. I changed all of my SIT grades to good grades. My dad was so happy that I did good my first year of school. He asked me to print my results. I did, and turns out he had to send them to our car insurance company for a good student discount. Ultimately, I committed insurance fraud by accident. But I got the discount. When I was like 7 years old, I was playing in my back garden with those incredibly bouncy little balls you got, just bouncing them high off the house and letting them bounce randomly before trying to catch them, as you did. One time I went for this huge throw off the wall and it bounced crazily off various surfaces so fast I completely lost track of it. So my 7-year-old logic was to stand back in the same place and throw another ball the same way. I watched it bounce this way and that about 10 times before finally hitting a plant and coming to a rest in a flower bed. I went over to pull back the foliage and sure enough there were both balls literally lying touching each other in the mud. At the time I was like, yep, makes sense. But over the years since then I've often thought about it and how the hell it worked. Our power was out due to a storm. I had a camp stove to use for boiling water to make a coffee pour through, but I couldn't use my electric grinder for the coffee beans. I tried fashioning a mortar and pestle but it was taking too long. So, I put the coffee beans in a couple of Ziploc bags, placed the bag right behind a car tire, then ran over it back and forth a couple of times to crush the beans. Worked like a charm. One time I sent a letter to a local address by putting the return address as the address I wanted it to go to, not putting postage, and dropping it off in a public mailbox. Went to them returned to sender due to insufficient postage. Far from the dumbest working idea in the thread, but I once got an extra day to work on a video project in high school by coming to class with a video that was just a quarter second of blackness, eagerly volunteering to go first, then acting confused and scared when the file didn't work. The teacher took pity on me and told me to just bring it the following day, and I got to finish it that evening and still got full credit as if I did it on time. Back in the flip phone days, I had dropped mine and the screen stopped working. I could make and receive calls, but the screen was just completely blank. I put up with it for a couple of weeks because I couldn't afford a new phone, but one day I had the thought of well, if dropping the phone made the connection loose, maybe the same thing can fix it and threw my phone at the ground. I picked it back up and the screen was working. In university I was late on an assignment that was supposed to be in my TA's Dropbox by noon that day. I didn't manage to get there until almost 3 so I was sure he had already emptied it. Now, the drop boxes were literal boxes in cubbies with a slot on the front and a lock on them that prevented them from being pulled out. The rack holding them was just a basic metal frame with about 5 rows of boxes. My TA's box was somewhere in the middle of the shelf. So I figured, I'm late anyways, why not take a chance? And slipped my assignment into the box below my TA's box. I got my assignment handed back a few weeks later than everyone else and it had a note from another TA scribbled on it that said, "Looks like this fell into my box by mistake." I got full marks on the assignment. In college I was taking a class that required me to purchase an online textbook and workbook that was registered under your name, basically ensuring that each student would have to buy a new online copy each semester instead of buying used textbooks. I had a friend who took this class a semester before me so we came up with the idea to message customer service and explain that I had recently gotten married, so my last name had changed, and I legally changed my first name from my friend's first name to my first name, and I would need them to change it in their system. It totally worked and the rep even congratulated me on my marriage. This idea could have easily gotten me fired if it went wrong. I was working as art director at an animation studio, making videos for clients. One client was especially pesky about the use of yellow in the background. They wanted it to be that of their logo, which was this horrible neon piss yellow. We advised against it, but after numerous calls we had to cave and gave a version with that color. They hated it, and asked for a change. What followed were 12 versions with numerous calls in between tweaking the color over and over. Eventually I got tired of it and just sent the original version again. I didn't even bother to rename the file. The client said, "This looks exactly the way I wanted, thank you." How that ever went right I still have no idea. Dressing like a redneck to pick up chicks. Went to college in the South, but the guys there were all very preppy. I thought because a lot of the girls grew up in the South, they would be drawn to more of a redneck vibe that not many people on campus had. So I bought a camo fishing hat. Literally had 3 girls start conversations with me that day. Was really desperate to leave past employer after 15 years. Had been applying and interviewing and striking out. Finally got an interview at a place where, at the time, I felt, I am not really sure this is right for me, but anything is better than where I am at. Instead of prepping for the interview, rehearsing answers, etc., I pulled an office space. I was cocky, brash, unconcerned, made it seem like I was happy where I was at and didn't really care if I got the job or not. They called me back the next week and I waited a week to return their call. Same deal with the second interview. When they offered me the job, I hemmed and hawed, said I needed to think about it really hard, and that it was a big move for me, etc., etc. I came back and demanded well over $15,000 above what they were offering in salary. They accepted. In college, my buddy and I took an investing class, and for one of the projects we had a month to invest fake dollars into the stock market and see which team would have the most money after a month. It was spring semester, so we put all of our fake money into Heinz, thinking there would be a spike in ketchup and mustard sales as the weather got warmer. The next day, Berkshire Hathaway purchased the entire Heinz company and the professor accused us of insider trading. We had no idea what we were doing. If I stop showing coworkers how to use Excel, I'll get to do all the easy Excel stuff while simultaneously being patted on the back for doing the hard stuff on the team no one else could. Basically, unless you want to be super upper management and give your life to your work, play clueless. Don't let them know you could simplify a report that takes several days into literally minutes. Someone else will take the credit and then you'd have more to do. I am very antisocial and don't get along with people, don't go out and dread to talk to anyone. School trauma, I guess. So I moved in a house with 9 strangers as flatmates to force myself to interact with people. So far I enjoyed it living there. I am no longer afraid of talking to them, met many nice other people that even like me. One dude let me draw on his face after he came without costume to the Halloween party and was so happy. He even recognized me a week later, shouted my name and hugged me. Others complimented my gunshot wound I made. They really care about what I did and do. They are nice and I like them. I am a poor student living in Germany. Students are required by law to have health insurance. The university will expel you if you don't have health insurance. The lowest rate I could get was about €189, $208, a month. I usually don't even spend that much on food. There was just no way that I could pay such a high rate. I wrote my insurer countless letters and emails explaining how there was no way that I could pay €189. They refused to lower my rate, explaining how they are just following the law. They even informed my university that I had failed to pay health insurance. The university then threatened me to exmatriculate me. In my desperation, I wrote the German Ministry of Health. I explained myself and asked them to talk to my insurer. A week later I received a letter from my insurer informing me that they had cut my rate to a mere €89 a month and that this reduction was applicable to all month prior. My rate is about to go up again, but this time I should be able to manage. I was pulled over for speeding by a state trooper with a car full of friends in college. I didn't have time to explain to them what I was about to do, and to just go with it. Officer is walking with that swagger walk they do when they do they're gonna write a ticket, and he comes up to the window and I'm having a full-on asthma attack, wheezing and rocking back and forth saying my inhaler ran out, trying to get to a Walgreens for a new one. The guy was like, "Oh sit. Follow me." I got a police escort to buy a pack of gum. Got out of the ticket. Was really poor when my future wife and I exited college. Went on a cruise with friends and didn't have a lot of money to spend. Cruise wouldn't allow you to bring alcohol on board and we weren't willing to pay for drinks due to budget. Purchased a liter-sized sealed bottle of water and some cheap rum, drilled a hole in the bottom to drain the water and funnel in the rum, then superglued the bottom again. Water was caught by ship security scanner, but guards said it's just water and let us through. We had cheap mixed drinks for the duration. We look back on those days fondly. We wouldn't never think of doing that today, but it was funny back when we were young. In my senior year of high school, we had to spend our final quarter doing mandatory volunteer work to graduate. I was placed at a Head Start in my city, and while some of the kids I worked with were great, there was one, Brandon, who was an absolute nightmare. 20 months old, endless energy, no empathy, no speech beyond a few words, and no ability to recognize pain in other children. At nap time, someone always had to be sitting next to his cot, as he would otherwise just get up and run around, sometimes hitting the other sleeping kids, if he could get away with it. He would be a spiteful little shit and repeatedly stick his feet out from under his blanket after you pushed it back in, like it was a game. One day I got so frustrated trying to get this brat to sleep that I basically just laid him down flat, arms and legs together, and closely tucked his blanket in under him from top to bottom like a burrito. To my shock and delight, he made no attempt to escape and was asleep within 2 minutes. I repeated this tactic over the next few days with the same results. It worked. Brandon would sleep. Brandon would actually faking sleep. One of the actual teachers/workers there saw this one day, and asked me what I was doing. I explained the process, but she was skeptical until I showed her just how quickly Brandon would chill out. I swear, her face lit up like a Christmas tree. Oh my God. Years ago, the foundation of my house would let water in right at the seam of the wall and hatchway. I decided to dig down so I could seal it from the outside. I got a few feet down before I couldn't reach with a shovel. So what did this genius do? I went in head first and kept digging. But then my arms were getting tired and I decided I should quit. I'm now doing a handstand in a narrow pit and have no way to back out of it. I live far enough from neighbors that yelling would do nothing. After a few minutes of coming to terms with the fact that this is how I die at 28 years old, I decide I will try to walk up the foundation wall with my hands one last time, and it worked. It could have ended quite badly. In the end, it worked. I was able to seal the issue from the outside. I jumped in a puddle with a frozen sheet of ice on top to get out of doing a test I didn't study for in elementary school. Soaked and freezing, I told my teacher that I slipped and fell. She called my mother to pick me up and I got another day to study. It was below zero and I could have gotten hypothermia or something, but I guess it worked. I once faked being sick when I was in middle school and told my mom I had a sore throat and felt a cold coming on. She took me to the doctor and it turned out that I did, in fact, have strep throat lol. I used to know a guy who, every week, would order his Saturday night curry for delivery while sitting in the pub and then walk over the road to the curry house and get it and himself delivered home. This went for about 10 to 12 weeks. One week, we were sitting having a pint and the owner of the curry house walked in, took his order, and had him picked up from the pub. He said it was easier for everyone concerned. We had a noisy rotating rooster weather vane, loud enough to keep people awake on windy nights, despite having been lubed. So I filled the hole the rooster rotates in with Crisco, even though people said it was a dumb idea and wouldn't work. Never had to lube it again because the Crisco didn't break down like other lubes. It probably wouldn't work in this day and age, but back when I was young I was tired of retail and wanted an office job. I just lied my ass off and pulled a total George Costanza what with friends coach to answer their phones as a business and such. Got hired as an admin assistant and been steadily moving up since. Years ago I remember applying to a bunch of copywriting jobs and feeling frustrated because I wasn't hearing back from any of the places I was applying. It was especially frustrating because I was putting in all this time on cover letters and I felt like nobody was even reading them, so I said, "Faggot, I'm gonna write one that is ridiculous, that is more me." I absolutely thought it was a dumb idea and never imagined that it would work, but somehow it did. I applied with this cover letter and the subject line copywriter, "Will work for beer," to a job that I was underqualified for. It managed to catch the eye of the headhunter for the ad agency and was enough to get me an interview. Shortly after that I was hired and ended up working there for a few years. However, this probably wouldn't work everywhere, but it fit the culture of the agency. Plus the job listing said that I would be working for beer brands as clients and that free beer was a perk of the job. I was like 7 and had a loose tooth that I couldn't pull out. Tried to string attached to the door. Didn't work. So I tied a string to it and tied the other end to my dog's collar. Threw a tennis ball. Bye-bye tooth. I poured transmission fluid in my gas when I was 16 to make my car mimic the smoking from the tailpipe like in the movie Uncle Buck. It worked too well. People were pissed.